So what can we say about The Division 2? After a strong release and some very positive reviews, the game looks to be heading down a path to success. So what's my take on the game? Let's have a look. I've seen a lot of people calling The Division 2 the best looter shooter game out there to date, and I have to agree with them on this point, purely for the fact that I have not played a game that gives you so much loot to pick up and discover throughout the course of your gameplay, other than maybe Diablo 3. Now, this is quite big because if we look at the other games that are around The Division 2 and this style of game, we get to look at Destiny, Destiny 2, Anthem, Fallout 76, and even the First Division. Now, the First Division was a pretty good game in all, but it lacked a little bit of guts, and mainly in story and in endgame. The content that we got with the Division in terms of the loot, I would say was still very strong, and what they've done in the Division 2 is just built upon what they already had. Destiny and Destiny 2 had problems at the beginning, but are probably considered one of the strongest games for a looter shooter up until now. Destiny 2 has had a bit longer to kind of work and fix what they already have, and right now what we have with Destiny 2 isn't a bad game. But Destiny 2 still runs into that issue of not having enough gear to reward players with who put in that time and effort. As where with Division 2, through my many hours of playing the game, yes, I have picked up a lot of gear that I don't need, and I'm either selling or deconstructing, but it's that feeling of once you complete a mission, side quest, defeat some random boss, do a control point, any of these things, you're constantly being rewarded with gear, and it's not just that you're picking up gear from fallen enemies. You're picking up gear from the loot boxes that are placed all around the map, and it's not like there's one, over a small or large spread of land, but there is loot sprawled everywhere. But I'll get back into loot in a minute. I want to start by talking about the story that Ubisoft have given us with The Division 2, and I have to say, upon what we had on the First Division, which was okay. I wouldn't say it was great. Once you've completed the game, there was nothing really to finish the story off. They brought out new content and things, but it just, by that time, I was already over the game and already on playing something else. So with the Division 2, so far, I've completed the story, the side quests, and now on to the world tiers. So as of recording, I am on world tier 2. So this is quite neat because they've given you a main story which wasn't the most detailed story out there, but it didn't need to be. It didn't need to be this epically told story. You know what's happened. You know that society, civilization, everything's gone to shit, and the result is that everyone's fighting for their survival. And we had that with Division 1 with New York, so there was no real need to kind of build that story up again. We know what your role in the game is. You're there to help these communities within the game try and rebuild and get back to a state of peace. And there are always going to be people out there trying to stop that. And we see that even if we look at The Walking Dead. You've got all these people trying to rebuild their lives, but you've got the few that want to rock the boat. They want to destabilize society even further. And this is what The Division does with its story and with its game. And like I said, you don't need them to have this big storytelling arc for you to do that. There's a lot of lore placed within the game, whether it's in the story missions, the side missions, all the stuff that you have in your when you go to your options menu and you look at the lost footage and the communications and all of that. The way they've done that part of the story, I have to say I enjoyed it quite a lot. I didn't find any part of that to be boring. And once you get past the story, well, the story missions and the side quests and everything, and you move on to the strongholds, that to me opens up a whole nother level to the game. And that's something that, Destiny never does with their game. Yes, they bring out new content, but they don't build upon what you've done within the game. Like when you walk into the White House or into the 2 settlements, after you've completed some big task, you have people talking about it and people thanking you. Where's that effect in Destiny? When you've taken down a big boss or you've defeated the story, you don't get that sense of you've just completed something big. You've done something good. As where in the Division 2, I get the feeling there's more of a sense of achievement within the game, and it's so fun going back to the settlements and that afterwards, or through your gameplay, because when you go in there and you see that the things that have updated, that gives you a sense of pride that you've achieved something within the game. I mean, it's all generic, and yes, what my settlement looks like and what I've unlocked is pretty much going to be the same as what you've unlocked. It's all part of the story. But there's more of a sense that you have achieved something with the Division 2 when you go into these areas than you do when you play Destiny or Fallout, because, Fallout, there is nothing there. And Anthem, I gave up after 4 hours because it was just so boring and I couldn't be bothered playing through that hard, slow slug. But nothing in the Division 2 with how the story progresses has me thinking, why am I having to do all of this? And that leads into the gameplay there as well. The enemy types aren't very different, and that was a problem that the Division 1 had. A lot of the enemies were exactly the same, just skinned differently. And to a point, I would say that is still the same with the Division 2. But with the Division 2, the enemy types, they do have their subtle differences. So whether it's the hyenas using the RC cars or the outcasts having the bombers and things that run at you, a lot of these things, they're not very different, but in another way they are different, and they do change up how you approach each mission. Because when you go from playing in a settlement area mission to a campus area mission, you can't just run into the mission like you would in another mission and expect the same sort of result. Many a times I would take a mission the same way that I played the previous mission and just totally regret what I did, and I would have to go back and rethink how I played that mission and how I approached it, hang back a little bit. And that was fun a lot of the time, and you can argue that all these games are just rinse and repeat repetitiveness, but nothing with the game really made me feel like I was having to grind out the story and really have to push myself to get through it. As where if you take Anthem, everything I did in my 4 to 5 hours of playing, it all just felt the same, and there was no diversity, no variety in the mission types, the enemies, everything was just the same. Destiny doesn't quite have this problem. Obviously, they've got different enemy types with the different races. But going from Destiny 1 to Destiny 2, you kind of expected there to be a little bit of a difference. And what we got was, Destiny 1.2 or 2.0. Much more of the same with little change. And the Forsaken DLC, did bring in a few little changes, but nothing too drastic. It's all still very much the same. So then moving on to the loot, which I have touched on at the beginning, the way that they have done their loot drops and their gear and weaponry, yes, you're going to find a lot of the same stuff over and over and over again, obviously at different levels and gear scores and things like that. But that possibility that you're always getting something better, and it's probably a 1 out of 10, maybe 2 out of 10 times you're going to get something better than what you've got. But that's fine, because what you're getting, you can use for your settlements to upgrade your settlements through the projects, or you can sell at the vendors so that you can buy better gear, or you can deconstruct if you want to do crafting. And the way they've done this is quite neat. I've held off doing my crafting until now, being in the world tier, when you can upgrade your crafting station, and you can get the better blueprints and things, and that was one of my tips, is maybe you hold off doing the crafting, because the crafting at an early stage is pointless. You're just going to waste all your materials just to go and find something in the field that is better, or you're going to buy something that's better. But what they've given you with the gear in this game, you're always getting something better. And that is my argument towards Destiny, is, you've got this grind. And I'm sure that Division 2 will have a grind when it comes to gear later on in the game. But in order to try and get to that top tier of gear score, or light level if you're talking Destiny, what Destiny makes you do in that grind is horrible. You can literally grind for 12 hours and move up maybe 2 light levels. As we're with the Division 2, through the first few world tiers, you're constantly getting stuff that is better, and that makes it more fun. And yes, and it is fun, because you are going back through the same missions again with slight twists, with being different enemies. And that would be super frustrating if you were going through all of these missions and getting either gear that's the same level as what you've got, or is lower than what you got, and you're going through all of these missions and you're not advancing your play any further. That would be crazy. And that's something that, with Destiny 2 and Destiny 1, was something that really put me off putting or sinking many hours into it, because everything's locked behind, well, you got to go and do the raid, and you got to go and do this. And it's like, yeah, I understand that, but there should always be something that you can achieve within the game that's not tied to, something that you have to do with other people. And that is something that, with the loot in Division 2, I would say is a huge thumbs up to what Ubisoft have done. And in many, many respects, they've taken a page out of what they've done with Assassin's Creed. You're constantly finding gear, whether it's armor, weapons, you're always finding stuff in Assassin's Creed Odyssey that you can use, especially with the new system that they've brought in. You can put onto your character and then kind of use a skin to make it look like something else. I don't think that's what they're going to do with the Division 2, but it's the same premise. You've always got that ability, and there's always that little carrot out in every little nook and cranny of the map that gives you that opportunity to find new gear and find new weapons to increase your game score, or to increase your damage and defense when you're going around the map. As for the end game, if I'm being honest with you, the Dark Zone is something that I haven't really done. I'm kind of more focused on advancing through the world tiers. The 2 little tastes I've had of the Dark Zone in the beta and in my relatively early stages of playing the full game, I have to say, were not very inviting for me. It felt very much like the Dark Zone from Division 1 in terms of being trolled by people. I understood it in the first game. I don't understand it in the second game, because Ubisoft said that, they would do a competitive Dark Zone, I think, every week. One of the 3 Dark Zones would become a competitive zone, where it would be player versus player instead of how it's meant to be, where the non-competitive one is you versus more of the enemies within the map, and not necessarily against the other people. I find the penalty system that they have for the Dark Zone now, it doesn't deter and it doesn't stop anyone. So if the Dark Zone frustrated you in Division 1, they're going to frustrate you a lot in this. Right now, I don't really recommend going into the Dark Zone. So I can't really review that aspect of the game. The strongholds, though, very fun. So once you do the first 3 strongholds, you will advance to World Tier 1, and then it will change to doing 2 missions and 1 stronghold each time to advance to the next tier, with the tidal basin coming out. I think it might be next week. It shows up on your map, but I don't think you can do it yet, and that would be World Tier 5. So I'm currently working to get to World Tier 4. There is still a lot to do once you finish the main story and you go through the first strongholds. I won't tell you. I won't spoil what happens in the game. I'll let you figure that out for yourself. But the game isn't done when you finish the main story missions. And what we have gotten with the end game for the Division 2, I have to give them a lot of credit for, because it would have been easy for them to just end it with the story and then just go into the Dark Zone and wait for DLC, which is kind of what we got with Division 1. But Ubisoft have put in a lot of time to work on a game that is rewarding from start to finish, with the outline for their DLC pretty firm in place before the game even launched. We never got that with Destiny. We never got a plan straight away when Destiny launched. We had to wait a little bit before they announced what was going to come. But with the Division 2, the plan is pretty clear, and we won't have to wait too long for new content. So all in all, I would say that this game is a very big success for Ubisoft. The only thing that maybe is a little bit negative but ends with a bit of positivity is just the fact of the bugs that we have gotten in the game. Some of them have been a little bit more game breaking for some. In one of my last videos, I talked about the castle bug, which Ubisoft have confirmed in their state of play video, that yes, the castle does stay grey once you do the mission after you're speaking to Kelso. So we'll clarify that. But it does seem that there are still bugs at the castle, not necessarily with the castle turning grey or green or whatever, but people are reporting that the bugs that they're getting won't let them talk to Kelso. So there is still that. And there are a few other bugs that, if you go onto the Ubisoft forums and onto Reddit, that are frustrating a lot of people. And Ubisoft are working on it. And that's the positive thing, is Ubisoft have been very vocal and upfront with the community on the issues that the game is having. And they are working on things. They have had some patches come out. So this is all things that, for me, are things that other game companies can take a look at. And maybe follow suit. But the Division 2, if we are comparing it to the Division 1, is a massive step forward in the right direction. Comparing it to the other games in its genre, Destiny, Fallout 76, and Anthem to a degree, they're showing with Division 2 how to do a proper looter shooter. And it would be interesting to see what Bungie have to say about the Division 2. I'm sure that they've got people playing it and taking notes. Maybe the future of Destiny will show some signs of what the Division has. But as for giving the game a score, I don't want to give it a score because it's still a week into the game being out, and a lot of things can change. I'm not going to say, oh, well, it's 8 out of 10, and then, a month later we're saying it's actually a 5 or is it a 6. But it is a very strong game, very good game. I would recommend this game to anyone that has been slightly interested in it. If you were a fan of Division 1, I think you'll be very happy with the Division 2. If you're coming into this series, I think there's a lot there to tide anybody who's a fan of this genre over. And yeah, I think that what we have is bordering on the best looter shooter game. It's close to a masterpiece for the genre. I'm not going to say it's a masterpiece in a total gaming sense, but for the genre that it is set in right now, it is up there. So I'm going to leave the video there. It's a bit longer than I wanted to make, but anyway. So as always, guys, hit the subscribe button and the bell notification, and if you liked the video, I would truly appreciate it if you hit the like button as well. If you want to follow me on Twitter and on Twitch, those links are in the description below. So let me know in the comments how you are liking the game, if there are any favorite parts of the game that you want to share, and again, if there are any tips that you want to share with anyone on locations, how to go through parts of the game. So yeah, leave those comments down below. But that's all for today. So until next time, guys, take care, and I will see you later.